Hello, I'm Dean Martin with Transmission Digest. Welcome to the Transtar Industry Studios here at Babcock's Media.
Welcome to part 2 of the 8HP autopsy. Again, with me is Anthony to assist, and we're going to go through each component quickly. First, we're going to start off with the valve body. Again, the valve body itself, not too much different from the 6-speed. It's got the normal solenoids, normally applied, normally vented solenoids. You can't intermix them, just like on the 6-speed. What I want to bring your attention to, there are 2 solenoids that are unique for the drive-by wire. One is the park release solenoid, and the other is a park hold solenoid. And what makes the park hold solenoid unique, it doesn't flow fluid. It's an actuator, and if it's a ZF model, it's got a green cap. If it's a Chrysler 845RE, the appearance is somewhat different. As I mentioned before, these are Mechatronic valve bodies, which means the computer is built into the unit. Well, there we go. These things get a little sticky. And what we have here, these are 3 jaws that when this energizes or de-energizes, these open and close to merely grab onto this plunger to hold it in the park position. So you got to make sure that this is working correctly. This works in conjunction with the solenoid, with the park release solenoid, which is an on-off design, unlike the others, which are a PWM design. As far as interchanging, because it is a Mechatronic unit, and this is the TCM, you're going to have to really have the correct valve body when you have to replace it. So don't assume one can be put in for another. As I mentioned, the pump assembly on this is a remote access. Go ahead and pull the A clutch out. Is a remote access vane type pump. It's a dual chamber, and it's an efficient design. The pump itself is actually the same whether it's a ZF or Chrysler, whether it's a small unit or large unit. And the pump itself is interchangeable. The clutch pack, the small clutch pack here, is the A clutch, and this is the A clutch hub. And these are rather unique frictions. You set that over there. And you have just a normal piston. Now, what is unique about this is the Belleville spring. There are 2 split rings that hold the Belleville spring in position, and you got to be real careful because they can bend easily. This is the B clutch piston, and what's unique about this, there's no return spring. It's using hydraulic pressure to return the piston, unlike any other clutch that would have a spring for piston release, and this hole is above the case, and this is where it's fed, so that when the clutch is not applied, oil goes there to release it, and that's because of a decoupling design for hill hold and so on. This is a bonded. You got a small screwdriver. This is a bonded retainer, if you will. and it's got a little lineup tab. The piston itself is aluminum, and it just takes normal O-rings, but the retainer itself is bonded. Go ahead and pop the bolt. Again, we've pulled out a few bolts so that we don't have to stand here all day long zapping bolts out of here. Now the pump cover, the stator support, has a cage bearing on the back, has a bushing on the front. This is the pocket for the pump, and it has a normal drive gear and driven gear, and as I said, the pump itself is interchangeable between Chrysler, ZF, large and small. There are a couple of differences, one being the chain. The chain on the small 8 HP 45, for instance, and the Chrysler unit are the same. Because the 8 HP 70 is larger, this chain is increased by 1 link. You could actually interchange these and be incorrect, so you have to make sure that you have the right chain based on the model that you're using. These pumps can be taken apart. There's 2 O-rings that go on it. It's a fairly efficient design. They haven't had a lot of issues with it. The pump cover itself, normal metal clad seal, is held in by a snap ring, and it has a cage bearing instead of a bushing for the converter hub. And as I mentioned, that second clutch pack, this is the B clutch pack, and the same thing, it's got some unique looking frictions. It's got a normal backing plate and wave plate like any other clutch pack. And this is the B clutch hub, but it is also the P1 planetary ring gear. This is the start of the planetary gear set. The shim that's here is actually the selective shim to set in play. So if your in play is incorrect, that's where you adjust it. Getting into the rest of the components, we have one thing that creates some problems, which is the snap ring. As you can see, this is a long aluminum tube. It's a drive shell, and everything fits down inside. They had concerns with this snap ring spinning out, and so what they did was to put some locking tabs on here to make it difficult to get it out. Chrysler actually has a set of 3 aluminum pieces to go down over the lip of this, because this is a thin wall shell, and if you go to pry on the snap ring, you can actually break the shell. So you can either get the 3-piece design that Chrysler recommends. A company called Adapticase, though, has brought out a set of rings for the large and small transmission that just goes down over to support the outside of this. Some rebuilders do actually put a hose clamp around here so that you can get in and pry this snap ring out. You'll want to go on the area 180 degrees opposite from the opening, which is contrary to normal, but if you try to do it at the opening, it's just not going to work. So when you pull this out, the drum is actually going to drop, and you can see that there are notches in here, and that's where the tabs on the Planetary are. And as you can see, there's 2 different rings for the 45 series and the 70 series. Again, this is the P1 Planetary. It's got an oil dam, an oil weir, thrust bearing, normal setup, and it's the first Planetary to come out, and these are the anti-rotational tabs that are in the Planetary itself And that's what makes it difficult to get this snap ring out, as Anthony found out. The next thing is the sun gear. This is actually a dual sun gear. This is the P1 planetary sun gear and P2 planetary sun gear. The splines for the A clutch hub are offset, but no problem because you can't reverse it because the tooth pitch is different on both gears. So you can't put that upside down. This is the P2 planetary. And what I want to mention, built into the OD of this are little magnets, which is what actually feeds information to the input speed sensor. You really want to be careful with this so that they don't get bent. Again, on the back side, it's got a normal oil weir. You're going to need to pull this race off if you want to pull the main shaft out. And there's 5 sealing rings on the front, 2 sealing rings on the back. And a lot of lubrication holes. When you rebuild it, always make sure all these holes are open, because if you have a blocked passage, you could have a real problem. This is actually the P2 ring gear, P3 sun gear, which is snap ring together. And I wanted to show the planetary. Grab that planetary. I wanted to show the difference in size between the 8HP 70 series, which is what we're doing, and the 8HP or 845RE series. So you can see there's a noticeable difference in size, but yet the design is the same, which means if you do one, you can do the other. And the same thing with the aluminum housing. You can tell the difference between them, and yet it's the same design. And as you can see, here's another shell. You want to pop that snap ring out? Okay. And that also has notches in it. And these are anti-rotational tabs to keep the snap ring from rotating. And this is the P3 planetary. One thing I did want to show, this happens to be out of the Chrysler unit, and you can see the grooves cut in here from the frictions. So again, I don't know why they relied on aluminum for the clutch hub. This is the D clutch hub, but as you can see, a fair amount of wear. So replacing these hubs, these shells are going to be fairly commonplace, at least on the higher performance engines. Go ahead and set that over. And even on this 8HP 70, they are marked pretty deep already. Don't know how many miles it has on it, but I suspect going to have a lot of repair on that. Now, down inside of this sun gear shell, this is actually the sun gear, the P4 sun gear, and this entire shell contains the E and the C clutch assembly. And it's held in, again, by a couple of snap rings, which can be a little difficult. And there's actually a snap ring above and below. And what I'll do is this is the E and the C clutch assembly. The frictions and steels are common between both clutch packs. They're external tooth frictions, which is a little uncommon. What I wanted to bring your attention to, really watch on the E clutch housing. I think you have one over there that's worn. Another area that could wear. So as you can see, on this 845RE, splines are completely stripped off. So it's another wear area. And
Here's the round snap ring that will go on the aluminum retainer.
So they had to have a round snap ring because the regular one could damage the aluminum, cause an issue. You have a normal retainer, bonded piston, and then your frictions and steels. These are selective backing plates. And you got to use caution because the Belleville return spring is going to be different between the C and E clutch. So when you take them apart, pay special attention to that. On the C clutch, there's actually a steel sleeve that comes off that has O-rings on the inside, but you have a normal Belleville, normal frictions and steels, as I said, bonded piston, retainer. So these two clutch packs are not really an issue. What I want to bring your attention to is the D clutch, and this is what is certainly a problem on these transmissions. On this particular model, the part gear is actually bigger than the shell. So it's got a lock here, a locking ring. The locking ring comes off to enable you to pull the part gear off. And then the D clutch assembly will come out. Hand me that one without the part gear. Other models, as you can see, the part gear is smaller, so it will pass right through the ring gear. So there's two designs, with a removable part gear and without. And not to mention different output shaft configurations based on ZF, Chrysler, two-wheel, four-wheel, and so on.
Yeah, the removable part gear was for the 70 unit. These 45s come through the tube.
Right. But you can have a Chrysler that also has the removable part gear. So it's a design preference. When you go to take this D clutch apart, the clutch pack is held in by a normal snap ring, normal set of frictions and steels, backing plates selective, but the issue is the retainer. The retainer is unique. There's no snap ring. The retainer actually is notched, and there are notches, teeth, on the piston seal, and you have to rotate this retainer to be able to get it off. And when you do this on a press, some guys just take a hammer, tap it around to where it'll come out. But
we took a 3/16 pin punch and put it in the press, and we're able to rotate it with a large screwdriver.
So when you take out the rest of the frictions and steels, and again, we already pulled the Belleville out, but these are the notches that have to lock underneath this when you put it back together. So you have to press it down, rotate it just slightly. The next thing is your steel piston, which is not bonded, but this is where the issue comes in. The piston seal is actually riveted to the drum. And to replace that, in the old, initially, you would just have to put on a drill press and hope for the best. The gears have to be pulled to be able to do this. But Transtec has come up with a much better way of doing it. And so this is actually the piston seal. And when these rivets are drilled out, you can pull the seal out. You'll take the gears, bolt the fixture down in, and Transtec has a real nice video on how to do this. It's online, and you have to drill new holes, tap it. You'll have bolts that bolts the new seal in position, and that way you don't have to replace the drum if that seal is bad.
And the pilot tool pilots in where this rubber seal would go. So
That's
that
like
will hold it.
That's like the feed tube. So pulling the gears out is not a problem. It's got a snap ring back here, but you can press them that way. The needle bearings inside are caged. You don't have to worry about loose bearings. Washer on either side, so it's not a problem. And the tool that Transtec came out with, they did a real good job, and it's not a problem with doing.
Yeah, matter of drilling and tapping in. Look like 5mm set screws, right, Mike?
Yep. So in conclusion, rebuilding this transmission, regardless of the model, is not a problem. As you can see, there are certain areas of wear that you want to address, and the biggest issue, of course, is the D-clutch assembly, taking out the retainer, replacing the piston seal, but it's certainly doable. Aside from that, you should be able to do these units without an issue. So other than that, you thinking anything else, Anthony?
I think we covered it, Mike.
Okay. Hopefully this helps. And I'm Mike Riley.
I'm Anthony Tosi.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
See ya.